This episode is brought to you by Superside. They're an always-on design company that delivers great design at scale, fast, affordably, and within 24 hours. Go to superside.com/MFM. MFM as in my first million. So superside.com/MFM to check them out.
This is very casual, so I don't even care. We can record right now. It's recording now, and we'll put that up. So this is very casual, and I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. And if you don't want to answer something, just say it. But
I will.
Yeah, so this is very casual. What's going on? You're Randy, right?
Yeah, that's me.
So I'm a fan of your guys' product, and typically I own it. I have my own gym downstairs. I do research on the businesses that we talk to and the people we talk to, but in this case, I didn't do too much research on purpose because I only have the product as a fan of the product's perspective, and I wanted to come from that point of view. But do you know what this podcast is and who we are or anything like that?
Well, give me a little more background because I mean I've been doing a fair number of these since this crazy making period took off, and it's hard to keep up with them. It was funny because I love to support, right, because I do so much in the entrepreneurial community. I love to support young entrepreneurs. So I'm basically, taking pods that I normally wouldn't take just because it's, we're here, we're home. And if I can support other guys that are getting stuff going, then I'm all about it.
And what you said, you've been doing a lot since the making. What are you talking about?
No, I said since this mayhem, right?
The Corona thing.
Yeah. I mean, I do quite a lot of stuff in the press normally just to promote my brand. But since we've all been locked at home, there's a massive proliferation of digital content in the form, sometimes in the form of video blogs and podcasts. And so I just got off another one with a investment bank, an industry panel, basically, but it was just a call. So I didn't have to be as pretty as I am now for you, Sam.
Good. Well, you look great. So I'm gonna give you the 20-second or the 2-minute background, and then we're gonna make this all about you. But so I'm Sam Parr. I own this company called The Hustle. And what we do is I started it. We just turned 4 years, like 2 weeks ago. So typically we have these conferences where we host trade shows, conferences where we host tens of thousands of people each year. But we also have The Hustle, and The Hustle is our daily email that goes out to millions of people. So millions of people log in and they get our news from us in their email inbox each morning. And it's a great business. It's a 8-figure, wonderful business that we've bootstrapped. And then we also have Trends and Trends.co. It's our subscription product. So it's this premium content community, which is also a great business. So
awesome.
And we do this podcast that I forget how many listeners we have, but we've had millions of listens, over 1 million listens. What this podcast kind of started as was me and Sean, my co-host, who isn't here right now, but we both have started companies, and we always had these interesting brainstorms with people like you who were our friends, and we would just riff on interesting ideas and on cool insights. And most people don't have access to those types of people, and so we just do this publicly. And so that's what we're going to do today. And so what I want to do right now is I want to learn a little bit about your background and kind of how you came to be where you are now and where you are now.
Well, where I am right now is in my house in Mill Valley. I'm sort of like, I feel like Rapunzel. I spend all my time up in the tower above my garage, right? It's become my sort of everything from the sports marketing department or sponsorship marketing department of TRX to the, production studio for every one of our sort of, blog interactions and that kind of thing. But, so I'm the founder of TRX. I live in Marin County. Prior to TRX, I was a Navy SEAL for 14 years and actually created the first harness while I was at the Special Missions Unit. And then just decided, after I left the SEAL teams, I went to business school at Stanford and decided while I was there that this was a viable business concept, which I think at the time I massively overestimated how easy it would be because the product was so great. But I used Stanford as basically an incubator, second year as an incubator for this concept. And TRX is, I guess this is our 15th year in the market. and we're doing pretty well. We're one of the only truly global fitness brands, and we've put close to 350,000 training pros through our TRX coach qualification courses, and we're in about, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 70,000 gyms and studios around the world, most of which are closed right now, which is an interesting, experience. But fortunately for TRX, we were for 10 years all B2B, just serving athletes, training centers, clubs, trainers, and boutique studios. And then about 4 or 5 years ago now, we decided, all right, we're ready to start to expand into the consumer, the true B2C consumer space. And, it's good that we did that, because obviously that side of our business in the COVID-19 environment is absolutely off the charts. The commercial side of our business is really struggling because all the gyms and all the trainers are all out of work. So it's been a little bit of a tale of two cities over the last couple months. But that's basically the snapshot of, what TRX is. And I'm co-chairman and really promoter in chief of the brand.
Do you own the company, or have you guys been acquired or anything like that?
Well, the company is, we have, I raised a long time ago. I raised a bunch of rounds of angel money when I started, and then took on private equity back in 2012, and then recently recapped the business to exit those initial partners and bring in some new partners, because that's one of the dirty little secrets about institutional capital is once you take it, it's very difficult to get rid of. So it's a private company, but it's co-owned by a bunch of us, including the capital partners that came in
Got it.
at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019.
How much did you raise from the angel folks?
Well, in the way back, I think I raised about, I have to think back to around $5 million from, in several rounds of angel money. And that's great capital, right? For, I don't know what the complexion of your viewership is, but for folks that are thinking about raising.
Yeah, don't use, you can use jargon. It's a very highly intelligent, not beginner audience. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, by far the highest, look, the cheapest source of money to grow a business is always what they call non-dilutive capital, right? And that mostly in the form of sales. But if you're going to take on dilutive capital, I think by far the best source is angel investors, for a couple reasons. If presuming you pick your angels the right way, because what you get in an angel investor, if you've chosen well, is you get somebody who has a lot of relevant domain expertise, because angels tend to invest in things that they know and think that one way or another they can contribute value to. If you pick the right angel, you'll get somebody who not only has domain expertise, but super passionate about your venture. Generally, angels are willing to invest on a common stock basis, which I strongly recommend to entrepreneurs that they stay away from preferred structures up until they're ready to sell a significant piece of their equity or exit altogether. Because once you bring in a preferred layer of equity into the cap stack, everything's different in terms of the solidarity that you once had, right, across the team and the investors, because that changes, and it's a tough change in the experience of most people that I know to manage. So I'm a big fan of angel investors, in which you get not only capital, right, but you end up getting pro bono experts effectively who are excited to be involved in your venture.
How big was the company when you sold it to PE, or sold parts to PE?
Well, it's been 2 rounds of that now, right? So the first money we took, and I think we were around 30 million, something like that.
In annual revenue?
In annual revenue, yeah, and who knows? We'll be north of probably north of 60 somewhere. Who knows how far? Because COVID is a interesting experience. And we don't really get into specifics because we're a privately held company. So if you're heading that way, I'll just redirect you.
Well, so you already said the ballpark is 60 million. It could be way higher, but that's a number that's been said. A company like TRX, you guys, so we talked to a lot of like these direct to consumer folks, which you didn't start out as, but you definitely are now. But
Yeah.
when I think of TRX, I think that you guys are in the same category as a CrossFit or, and this isn't an insult, but like Tony Horton, like you guys are like a brand, right? Like, you're not just some Amazon. You don't rank on Amazon, and that's how you win. TRX is something that people know, and it's a brand. Do you think that your valuation is significant? Like, will your multiples be significantly higher because of that? You think, or is it still rough to get a high valuation on products like this?
Well, I mean, so for starters, I mean, we are in it. We're the number one selling fitness item on Amazon.
Yeah, but I didn't mean like your path of success has not been like, well, we're just going to rank higher. Like it was just like people love and know us.
No, yeah, we built. I mean, look, from day one, this was never intended to be a get rich quick scheme, right? It wasn't a trend. I mean, it's funny because when I first started the business, there were no predecessors to the product that I brought to market, right? Our initial hero product, which was the suspension trainer. The idea there seemed kind of crazy to bring this strap into the club landscape full of machines and think that you were going to be successful. But one of the things that we did that was a really great choice, and I made plenty of less than great choices, but the one of them that was a great choice was really finding this sweet spot in helping training pros of all kinds, right? From chiropractors and physical therapists on one end out to MMA coaches and powerlifting coaches on the other end. And then obviously, and under the bell curve, tons of personal trainers and group fitness instructors. We decided we were going to become the business partner of them, and that we were going to give them this great tool that it's like I was described the suspension trainer like a magic wand, right? If you know the magic, you can become a magician to your clients and your athletes and deliver them unbelievable results. That always, you look at a 12 feet of nylon webbing and go, yeah, well, what can that do? With the right pro and the right knowledge in that pro's head, you end up going, oh my God, this thing, I've never seen anything like this, right? And that's a unique characteristic that not many products or services ever have, which is you have people that come in with a very low expectation and leave with a very high level of astonishment. And so that's been a powerful benefit to us. And then we diversified the company's scope of operations. We became, the largest provider of professional education to trainers. And then we broadened the product line significantly, all the while focusing on this premium brand that you alluded to, which I do believe brings, an enhanced multiple. The reality, though, is that long-term, if all a company wants to be is a product company, right, that delivers durable goods, because our stuff lasts for freaking ever, way too long.
No, I've had the same one. I've had the same one for 4 years. I think it was gifted on Christmas, and I've had the same one for 4 years now.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in 4 years is nothing for a one-on-one, right? I talk to people that are still traveling around using our like first gen strap from 2005 in their bag, and it's, I mean, on one hand it's a compliment, on another it's a nightmare, right?
You need what's it called? Planned
obsolescence. Yeah.
You need a break after 5,000 push-ups.
We never planned that because I really wanted to be, and I came at this whole thing, I started my entrepreneurial career at 39. So after a career as a Navy, I had a set of values that focused on premium level delivery. And if I was going to be associated with this brand, then that's what we were going to do. So we built everything that way. The unintended consequences, the one that you and I are beating around right now, is that your stuff lasts forever. And which means that, you either have to create more products to serve your existing customers, which is expensive, right? Because R&D is not cheap. Or you have to constantly be in search of new customers, which is not cheap. And so, it's I think that's why pure product co's get what I would say, unfair valuations relative or relative to some of these more fake companies that are, tech-based companies that have the potential, not the promise, but the potential to scale infinitely, right? And so those kinds of companies tend to get higher valuations than gear companies, and that's just one of those realities. And it's part of what, we've never planned to be just a gear company. We have always planned to expand our services into subscription services and content, and that's what we've done.
Right now, you guys what are your revenue streams? Your revenue streams are coming straight from. Your revenue streams are purchases from coaches and things like that, or not? Coaches and chiropractors and B2B people servicing clients, right?
We're an omni-channel distributor, so on the commercial side of the business, which is the B2B side, we sell to gym, we sell gear to gyms.
Yeah, and that's
services.
What is education?
Education to gyms and trainers. Yeah. Well, yeah. So we do. So we became early on. I mean, if you think back, nobody knew how to use a strap that didn't stretch and didn't have any weight attached to it. So if I was with you or one-on-one, I had almost 100% close rate in the earliest days. Problem was, I can't be everywhere. Right. So, and if I wasn't with you and you were just looking at a picture of it, say on the website, the conversion would drop to, 5%. So that was something that I realized very early. All right, well, I have to be able to scale my knowledge on how to use this thing. And so I brought in a guy who was introduced to me very, very early in the company's history, a guy named Fraser Quelch, who had been a career trainer and had written a lot of education in the form of courses for other pros, right? To teach other pros the various skills. I mean, how's a trainer or a coach learn his or her craft? They usually get a basic certification from a entry-level certification body like American Council on Exercise or NASM or NSCA. And then they go out into practice and they start developing practical skills. And along the way, they want to learn more about a particular tool or a methodology, and so they have continuing education requirements, right? Just like a doctor or a lawyer, they have to do so many continuing education units per year to maintain their basic certification. We became one of the leading providers of those CEC courses that help
so do you charge them
a new trainer or coach move toward mastery.
And that costs money?
Yeah. Our normal, we have about 10 courses of different kinds.
Not $89?
All B2B. And traditionally they were $295, right? So $295 for a 1-day qualification course. And it was 8 hours live in person. What you're probably seeing now is we've done some pretty incredible pivots with COVID-19 hitting and changing the landscape. And so one of the things we did early on was try to figure out, hey, all right, number one, we're not going to be able to provide education, right, as long as this thing lasts, because you can't get people together. Number two, most of the people who come to our courses are out of work. And so what can we do to support them was sort of idea number one. And then number two was, how do we take this moment, which is really a bunch of lemons being thrown at us, and make lemonade out of it? And we decided that, we can take our courses, we can make them free, figure out how to deliver them through Zoom instead of live. And we'll do that as long as this, crisis continues. And we'll just try to fill our bucket with a whole bunch of new pros of all kinds of stripes, right? Who on the other side of this will then appreciate that we helped them out when they were down, and also
so that you guys have revenue from selling the
so that's what we've been doing.
The main product, the main TRX, which it looks like you have a few varieties, but I imagine most is from the main one. And then you make revenue from these $100 to $300 B2B digital products. What's the breakdown? Is the actual product 80% of sales?
Oh, it's falling pretty fast as the education, and now what's the big epiphany and the big unlock that's gone on over the last 2 months is that we massively accelerated what already was a migration toward digital delivery and subscription models. And so, we've also got an app that we make money off of. That's a $4.95 a month app that supports the end user. And we have turned off the paywall on that during COVID, but that will go back on once everybody gets back to work. We're really using COVID-19 as an opportunity to to solidify the relationships with our existing customers and bring new customers into the tribe through a free door that eventually, obviously, everybody knows that no business can keep their services free forever. But in the meantime, we're using it as a big opportunity to build new relationships. So the mix is really changing.
Well, what was the mix
other thing
pre-COVID
that I think you're not, it's probably 70-30 between equipment, but you're defining equipment way too narrowly, right? You're looking at our hero products, which are the suspension trainers. We do the entire ecosystem of functional training. So we have steel ecosystems that you built, the infrastructure that that not only you hang straps on, but you fill with kettlebells, bands, balls,
which I've used.
Everything you would see in a gym.
Do you have a sales team to handle that? Like, did you have to do like hand-to-hand combat for that, or is a lot of it inbound and you're just fulfilling orders?
It's some of both, right? I mean, no, I don't think any business it certainly doesn't exist for very long as all inbound flow, right? Generally, you have to be out there.
Well, I guess but are you like running paid ads to them, or do you actually have a sales force hitting the phones and making it happen?
Both. Yeah, both. We advertise into the commercial landscape through the traditional, means to reach gym owners and trainers, but then we also have a pretty significant direct sales force inside and outside that does.
I'm looking at I use this tool that guesses website traffic. If I looking at this tool, I would imagine that your sales are like 4x in April what they were in February. It looks like you guys are just like your web traffic has gone through the roof.
Yeah, well, it certainly has, and the reason is I think less to do with anything we've changed in our marketing than with the reality that, as a 10-year B2B business, we've put, we serve tens of millions of people around the world who identify themselves as TRXers, but ironically had never bought a product for their home, right? Because they use us in the gym. And I run into people constantly. Some of my best friends, will tell me like, oh, I've never bought, they'll call me and be like, hey, can you give me a friends and family, discount? And I'll be like, you don't have one of our straps? These are people that I know are diehard TRXers, and then they'll be like, well, no, man, I do it 3 times a week in the gym, and so that was a reality that comes with being a B2B business for 10 years. But what happened with the virus was when all the gym doors got shut, all of a sudden, all of those installed base of TRXers went, well, how the hell am I going to do my workouts? And so they turned to our Amazon site and our website, and that's been, I believe, the big source of the growth, the explosive growth
of seeing like consumer goods or hard goods and digital products. So you're able to see how they both work. And from my perspective, and I've been an investor, and I have friends who sell direct to consumer hard goods, and then I also have a digital company, and I've invested in them as well. My perspective is that the D2C guys can grow their revenue from 0 to not 0 very quickly, but there's massive supply chain headaches. Whereas digital, it's often the opposite, where it's maybe a little more challenging to get started, but the margins are way better and you never have a supply chain issue. Knowing both sides of the business, which do you prefer?
Well, I mean, I think that which do I prefer? I prefer the one that's easier and makes more money. I think that. Yeah, well, the reality is that I think creating a digital company, pure digital, is hard because it's a very cluttered field, right? There's especially now. I mean, this virus has unleashed the digital universe, right? And so now, just like any other marketplace, there's going to be this explosion of would-be participants, and then there will be a consolidation. And some of the, they'll separate sort of the wheat from the chaff. And I think that we're in a really unique position because we started as a physical products company. Then we became an education company, education and content, right? Because we probably did 35 DVDs prior to DVDs becoming disintermediated by digital delivery. we've obviously taken all that content and repurposed it into our digital ecosystems. But then we became a brand, like a really significant premium brand in the space. And then we stretched that brand around the world. So now we're in a really unique position because we have the best of both worlds, right? We have a large customer base that bought our physical gear and that then came to group classes in clubs around the world that we helped develop and educate the instructors who are delivering those. So they got comfortable and identified with our brand. And then as we've done more and more consumer branding, we've extended that brand from the pro space, which is great from a credibility standpoint, because if trainers and physical therapists love you, the consumer at home tends to go, oh, well, these guys must be, a quality operation. And so now we're in a really unique position. Now we're turning on some new digital engines, some subscription engines that give us the best of it all, right? We will have our products, which you're right, you stock out of. I mean, we've stocked out over and over and over during this thing because no one plans for a, multi-time step function change in the demand curve, right? And you scramble to try to catch up to it. And I think a lot of us will find ourselves just about the time we're caught up and we've got this, whole new stockyard full of product.
Yeah, it's scary.
Maybe the demand will settle down a little bit and we'll end up with more product. Yeah. But that's part of being a physical product.
So, well, that's my question. Which one do you find
supplier?
Which one do you personally enjoy more? Both in terms of working on and the results.
I'm an inventor, so that is part of my, like, it's probably what made me want to go into the Navy SEAL teams. I have a MacGyver bent to me, and I came up with an old man that can fix literally anything with almost nothing. And so I sort of grew up, out in the garage until, the middle of the night holding a flashlight for my old man while he was, jerry rigging some kind.
All right, this episode is brought to you by Superside. All right, so here's the deal. I'm incredibly impatient, like horribly, horribly impatient. And if I get an idea at midnight, by 8 a.m. the next day, I want it done. But that's really hard because if something needs to be designed, where am I going to find a designer at midnight to try to make this thing, bring it to life? So I don't think I'm alone. Other startups, even huge companies, need design help fast, and they just don't have the internal resources or expertise to get it done. So how do you get reliable design done without dealing with expensive agencies and lots of freelancers? You use Superside. That's our sponsor for this week. Just go to superside.com/MFM and tell them what you want. They have a team of designers that can get it done fast. They are 20 times faster than hiring a designer and 50% more affordable than a traditional agency. So if you need high quality design done fast, try Superside. Lots of fast growing teams that are stretched are using them already. Check them out, superside.com/MFM. I've used them before. I love them. Check it out.
Of a fix to an old motor or to whatever. It could be anything. So I really enjoy the process of product creation. And I spend a lot of time and energy at TRX developing our next products. I also, though, appreciate and enjoy creating great content, whether it's in the form of pro education or whether it's in the form of end user content, workout content. And so I would say I like both. I like the economics of the digital side of the equation for the reasons that you've pointed out, right? You don't stock out of it and you don't, it scales infinitely, but I don't think that it's an easy business to just say, oh, I'm going to become a digital content publisher and I'm going to, make $1 billion. Yeah. Like you and the other billion would-be digital content producers that are out there are all right on the same path. And so I like them both. I like the multiples.
So I'm going to ask you
on
about some
digital content and subscriptions.
And I'm going to ask you about interesting ideas that you're seeing in new opportunities. But first, you said something that you're the chairman, right? So does that mean you're not the CEO?
Yeah, we brought in a president. I've tried a number of times to get out of the day in, day out management of the organization because a couple reasons. One, at this point, number one, there's one founder, right? And so you've got a certain amount of founder cachet that is really valuable in working with the press, in working with key accounts, right? In generating love around the brand that there aren't others who can do that. There are others who can manage the steady state sort of linear growth of a mid-size and growing company. In fact, there's those that can do that better than me because I'm more of a startup guy. So I've tried, several times over the last, call it 6 years, to get more out into the market and less in the conference room. We hired a president about 8 months ago who he and I have been doing a transition where I can, basically hand most of the day in, day out over to him and to the team. And then with our new partners, they're very good at the financial engineering side of the equation. So I'm not, right? That is just not something that turns me on. I like the outcome, but the process is just not something that, floats my boat. And everybody's cut of different cloth. So what I'm really focusing my energy on is promoting the brand, developing new products, and looking at new initiatives, right? That's something that I'm very good at and passionate about, is sort of trying to see
We're
around
very
the corner.
similar. So I've done the same thing.
And what the next opportunity is going to be
who
for the
handles
brand.
a lot of stuff. And I do the exact same thing where I can lead vision, but I also come at the very bottom and I can just change pixels and invent. I do it digitally, but the same exact crap where I have my computer up late at night and I'm just making stuff, and most of it sucks, but every once in a while I'll show it to someone and they're like, oh yeah, let's go make that.
That's the product creation dilemma, right? Most of it goes nowhere, but about every 10, every 10th effort, you go, wait a minute, there's something to this one, right? And that's, you got to be wired to not get frustrated by that. Just like folks who like to manage at that mid-level, they don't like the scariness and the ambiguity and the vagaries of the startup or creator. They like the consistent predictability of, weekly staff meetings and a checklist and all the things that make me sort of make the hair stand up on the back of my neck, because I feel like, man, this is not where I want to be.
But she had this company called Nasty Gal, and it scaled to, I forget the exact number, 100 or 200 million a year in sales, and had multiple offers around $500 million. And she screwed it up for a bunch of reasons. One of the biggest ones is she was like, I'm brilliant at creating, I'm horrible at operating. And I too am like that, where I'm brilliant at creating, but operating, I just don't find it to be exciting. And I think that most people who start stuff are the same way. But I think there's actually a huge issue. And you're in Silicon Valley, although you may or may not run in the Silicon Valley crew, particularly amongst that group of people, I've noticed there's a huge problem of people starting stuff who are afraid to hire people to actually run the thing. And what I've really embraced, and it took years to learn this, is that there's actually people who like creating the car from scratch and designing it. And then there's people who love modding it out and making it better. And having both is really important. How did you hire your president, and what was that like going through that process? And also, how many mistakes have you made in hiring the wrong people? Because that sucks too.
Plenty. Yeah, plenty. I mean, look, first of all, so I operated the company, every single day for its first 10 years. That's a long time, right? And at that point, when the engine of both creation,
well, why didn't you do that earlier?
Activation and management, that's like dog's years, right? Well, I think that a couple of reasons. One, I did try a couple of times, right? Starting around year 8 to bring in, a president. My idea was always, I'll bring in a president. And I never took a CEO title for years because I just thought it was sort of ostentatious for a little company to have a CEO. That was my personal opinion. So I was the president. So when I brought in a president, and the first one that I brought in, it really aligned with bringing in private equity.
Oh, why'd you
right?
wait 8 years? Like, why not in year 3?
Yeah, about year 10. Well, because we were still very much evolving, right? And I think that one of the challenges with bringing in somebody to take over the daily management is you have to be pretty well defined about where you're headed, as an entrepreneur before you can now hand the wheel to somebody, right? If you're wheeling right, wheeling left, that's not exactly the moment to be like, hey, buddy, here, take this, right? Because then the guy's like, well, where do I drive, man? So I think that's the answer. The short answer is I wasn't ready yet in terms of our definition to and the enough certainty to the general direction of our course to want to hand that over. But at about year 8, I was, and I said, okay. So I handed it over. Probably the first 2 presidents that I hired, which are both great guys, but the mistake that I made, largely from listening to my then private equity partners that had sort of their business school 101 playbook they were trying to run, which is go hire
kill me
a quote unquote
I hear
best
someone say
practice
that.
president.
Kill me.
Well, okay. So you're gonna hear. Yeah, I'm sure. I was just going to say, I'm sure you're gonna be hearing something familiar here, right? Which is that a lot of the institutional capital investors, they haven't run businesses themselves, so they want to execute what they learned in business school, which is the idea of best practice. Well, what is best practice? That's the problem, right? And generally they will say, oh, it's someone from the upper mid levels of a great big successful company that we've all heard of. What I've learned, and it took me two go rounds to learn this, by the way,
totally,
is that is almost a disqualifier.
I need a guy with an MBA telling me what to do. Like I need a fucking hole in the head. I don't like what, like, oh my God. I got lucky. Right. I've had a lot of great success. We have a guy, Adam Ryan, who's our president, and I've known him since high school. I'm from Missouri, so I'm not from like this fancy San Francisco stuff like I live now. And that was awesome because Adam is wonderful at being scrappy and things like this, but he also can be like a big company suit if you wanted to. And what I found is, and I've hired some MBAs and it didn't work out. What I found is these gray hair, they're not actually gray hair, but it's more figurative. These best practices, this bullshit, these people can't roll with the punches. And I've never had success with that type of, I have a few businesses on this, like little investments I've made, and we've hired CEOs who were like this, and it just, man, it never works. But you think that it should.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit akin to trying to get a cat to bark. Right? Cats meow, dogs bark. So saying that, well, either one of them should be able to do this thing is just not right, and you wouldn't do it because it would be preposterous. And yet, what people do all the time, especially institutional investors, make this mistake. Is they assume that because somebody operated at a scale, right, at a successful brand, that, well, that person clearly can, this will be easy for that person. And it's almost the reciprocal, because what they don't realize or haven't thought through is those people are playing a different game. Like Michael Jordan was, arguably the best basketball player in history. When he went over to the Major League Baseball, right, he hit with a thud. Why? Yeah. He's a great athlete. He's playing a different sport. So what worked for him on the basketball court, doesn't work when you're on the mound of a baseball diamond. And so I think it's a very similar thing. Big company leaders have large staffs, generally a lot of certainty in the direction that they're heading, kind of single digit management objectives, right? Up or down. It's
you're almost more like a politician.
Patient,
you're a politician a little bit.
Decision-making process.
So it's like,
right. Yeah, and that's the antithesis of a small company, right? A small company, and by that I mean anything south of $100 million, is constantly pivoting, and the windows to make those pivots are not years, they're not even quarters. You're lucky if they're months. And so, though I think the difference in the operating cadence and style is profound, and just going to a big company, a successful big company manager, and thinking they're going to be successful as a small company
I think that, look,
president,
once my business
almost never
a
works
financial arbitrage machine, and I need someone to figure out how to milk out 3% off the bottom line by using less materials, then I'm going to get one of those nerds. But until then, I need innovative people who understand how to be. It's a perfect balance of art and science, who understand like financial analysis and things like that, but who also can understand what motivates buyers, and who can think of widgets that make people feel good and want to purchase and be. It's just, I've been through this. So I empathize. You Are you investing in anything at the moment, or is 100% of your time on this? Or like on Saturdays and Sundays, are you tinkering with anything totally outside of this field? What interests you right now?
Perpetually. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different things that interest me. I'm an angel investor in a bunch of different enterprises, both inside and outside of health and fitness. Because I'm a I'm a startup nerd. So I live and breathe, that. And I teach classes at both my alma maters at the Marshall School at USC.
Dude, you're badass.
Graduate School of Business at Stanford. So I get to see a ton of young.
You're pretty
academic. I'd have to put that in
I'm
quotes.
right though. I mean,
I'm not sure that I would put academic.
Okay, so who cares?
Yeah, but I'm a lecturer, right? Not a professor. So that means that all you had to do was have gone there and then have done something that didn't suck subsequently.
You can kick someone's ass, but then also talk to them about Aristotle and like Britain's economic policy and how it impacted imperialism in the 1960s.
I'm an eclectic dude. You got that part right? I'm an eclectic dude, and I'm a super geeky inventor, which I love. I mean, I've got like 40 patents that I could care less about the patents. What I cared about was the thing, right? Like bringing the thing to life. And then once you do, particularly in today's digital economy, right, you got to protect it, because if you don't, you'll be knocked off and blown into oblivion almost immediately, with factory direct stores out of China that have FBA shops on Amazon now. So, so that's why I became, I joke about having a minor PhD in intellectual property law that I never wanted, but I had to learn. And so all of that, like all the nuts and bolts of creating, and then articulating a vision and wrangling a team to share that vision, and then moving that thing forward.
What are your
That's
best
the stuff that makes my my heart pound. Well, I mean, I suppose we'll wait and see until they pan out. But I've got no, not yet. I'm sort of an equity investor, right? I make a good living now, and so I'm not in any of these for a quick turn, but I think that they all will. And most of them are in areas that I tend to both invest and advise only in things that I think I can make a difference in. I've taken a couple of different flyers on things that, buddies that I trust and are domain experts in other areas have said, hey man, you should get in on this, but and also let's just qualify this. I'm a small, investor. I'm not placing 6-figure investments one after another, but I tend to invest in things where I can help the operating team based on my own experience, right? And really, experience is just the sum of all your mistakes as much as anything else. And so I can help early stage businesses set up their partnership arrangements, right? Figure out what makes a good partner, figure out what capital sources that make the most sense for them are, because I know both the pros and the cons of all of them at this point. And then, team selection. I've been leading teams since I was, 22-year-old frogman, and led all the way up to, the national level. And so I've got a lot of experience. Whether I've done it all right, I certainly haven't, but haven't done it all wrong either. But I've got a lot of experience in helping, build culture, create team dynamics that are durable and performance oriented, and build brands. So if it's in those categories, that's kind of my wheelhouse.
Are you an MMA fan?
Nature.
So I'm a huge MMA fan, and I this quarantine thing.
Yeah, big time.
I've gotten very healthy, like I've done Ironmans and things like that, but I've actually started using my TRX, by the way, and lifting weights, and I've gotten strong. But I have a weight loss challenge, and I have $500 on the line, and I have to hit it by Saturday, and I'm going to crush it just through diet and exercise, but I'm drinking like crazy amounts of water because I want to do like a MMA weight cut and just like destroy the benchmark that I've got to. Yeah. And so I'm currently drinking 3 gallons of water a day, and then tomorrow and the next day I'm going to taper down. My goal is just to crush everyone. What?
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been an MMA fan since before there was MMA, because, coming up in the SEAL teams, right, it was very eclectic in terms of the coaches that we would bring in. So I was I've been the full gamut. I was an MMA guy before MMA was termed, right? Everybody was still purists in their arts, but because I had this Bedouin lifestyle of constantly deploying and coming back, I didn't have that luxury. So I became, I'd been a kickboxer and a wrestler in high school, kickboxer through college, then got into jiu-jitsu at the end of college and leaned into that, hard as a SEAL. But I never had the luxury of being in one place for more than a couple of years at a time. But I've been a huge fan of we did a ton of sponsorship actually of the fighters in the UFC prior to Reebok buying the global rights to the sponsorship placements. So yeah, I in fact, Mike Dolce could help you with your weight cut, right? He's a freaking master at that stuff.
I've become friends with Ben through this podcast and media, and so he's been helping me out. And I'm name dropping a little, but I was a huge fan of his, and then I started talking to him. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm friends with someone I looked up to, and then I think we're having Michael Bisping come on and do a podcast as well.
Yeah, both of those guys are great, man. I mean, Askren's a stud wrestler, and Bisping's just you talk about one of the veterans of the sport. I was so happy when he finally got to the mountaintop after all those years of grinding, fighting everybody that was there to be fought, and he just kept sort of somehow falling short, but he finally got there before
about all this
stuff. I was stoked
and
for him.
Sometimes whenever I talk about like MMA and UFC, I'm like, I think I'm being too niche right now. No one cares. I think it's way bigger than I actually realize. But when you were in the SEALs, the SEAL thing interests me for 2 reasons. One, Jocko Willink? That guy's everywhere right now. So, and he's always fun. He's got good clips that are fun to watch. And then I'm also reading David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. It randomly came up on my Audible thing, and I started listening to it. It's emotional. It's sad. It's hard to listen to. Have you heard it or read it?
I haven't. No, I mean, I know David. He and I never work together, but you cross paths. Same thing with Jocko. Those guys are both way behind me in terms of age. But so in the SEAL teams, if somebody's more than a couple of years ahead or behind you, the likelihood of you knowing him is possible, but not high, unless you worked at the same places, right? In which case, then you transcend the age barriers because you're all, at a command together and you work together. And I never worked with either one of those guys. In fact, I think as I was getting out, they were both coming in. But I certainly know, of both of them, and I like what they've both done with their brands. And, Jocko's done some really, really cool stuff with his podcast and his other appearances. In fact, he popped up the other day on Billions, which I was laughing about. So the new season, he popped up in that, and I was like, yeah, man, that's what I love it when I see other frogs doing good stuff versus doing stupid shit where they're out there, telling and selling secrets that are going to, put other guys at risk, which I do not admire. But I really love when I see guys out there doing great things post-career, because that's what the whole country is supposed to be predicated on, right? It's the citizen soldier. You come in, you serve for however long, you try to serve as well as you can, and then you go on and do something else cool out in the civilian community and be able to share some of the things you learn.
When I started
I love
business,
that Jocko does that, and I love that Dave's doing that as well.
Like you, where I'm just like, I like to invent things and I like selling them and I like making money. What I didn't was what I always did track and field and running and weightlifting and swimming, and those are all individual sports. And what I really struggled with early on was how to be a leader. It's super hard because for a lot of people, they start stuff because it's like I said, it's fun and it makes money and it's cool. But then if it was successful, then they're like, oh, I got to be like a leader of men and women, not necessarily a creator of products. What do you think? Do you think that, I mean, I know the answer. The answer is definitely yes, but what specifically helped being in the SEALs in terms of business leadership and managing a team? And by the way, how many people do you have?
We've got about 100 full-timers, and then we we use another 350 master instructors to deliver our education courses. So they're 1099s. But, so it 100 full-time plus or minus. And
do you think people would say you're a good manager
that we employ as contractors?
A good leader?
I think they'd probably say I'm a better leader than I am a manager, right? That would be my guess, because it maps to, I can manage. And the distinction between that to me is quite a wide gap, right? There are people, I think, who can do both at a very high level, but not many, because I believe that most of the characteristics that make someone really good at one or the other almost prevent you from being good at both. I mean, there are some extraordinary people, I think, out there that can do both, but management requires just a different level of, attention to minutia. I won't just say detail, because I'm very detail oriented, but ongoing minutia, which is important in making a business go. I don't have the patience for it. And I also, I never really liked corporate management. I like leadership a lot, and leadership's about storytelling, being authentic,
you think you're
motivating,
good at that? I mean,
communicating.
You seem very charismatic. Do you think you're a good leader?
Yeah, I think that's one of the strengths that I have developed largely as a result of my experience in SEAL teams,
and that our listeners can learn. You think?
Well, I mean, we do. So I do a keynote that is pretty massively oversubscribed, frankly, called "Lessons of a Frogman," and it's leadership lessons, business leadership lessons that I learned as a SEAL, which turns out almost all of the key lessons that I know I actually learned as a SEAL. The leadership lessons, not necessarily the tactical business lessons, but you would think, and I actually had one of the assistant deans at Stanford Business School when I was out interviewing to be accepted there, give me this sort of patronizing, put his hand on my shoulder and basically said, well, then, why do you think we should take you, Randy? And I talked about, my leadership experience. I was at that point, I was at the Special Missions Unit as a troop commander, and had been in the SEAL teams for, 10 years or so. And, then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, well, then it's a bit different leading in the real world than it is in the military. Don't you think? Because out here, you can't just tug on your collar device and have everyone snap to and do what you say. And I was so astonished, man. I was like, is this guy for real right now, or is he baiting me? And I basically said to him, Dean, if that's your view on military leadership, then I think it says a lot more about how little you know than it does about the subject of leadership. And, not surprisingly, I didn't get in that time. But I think that if you're talking about people and groups of people, there are many, many more commonalities to how to lead and motivate the group than there are differences, depending on, irrespective of domain, because you're talking about anthropological behavior, and that changes very slowly over millennia, and whether you're a baker or a frickin' frontline soldier or a software developer, if you're dealing with other people, humans behave, largely the same way. They have different microcultures, but we're all part of the Homo sapiens species, and we've evolved our behaviors over, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. So the commonalities are that people want to be inspired. They want to associate with something they believe in and other people who share that belief system. They want to feel important, right? Like they're contributing. Everyone wants approval and reinforcement that what we're doing is good. And so figuring out how in a context to provide those basic human needs is what leadership's all about. And I think that it's not actually very domain specific, whereas management arguably is much more domain specific, right? Depending on the industry. And I think that requires, a different set of skills. And very often the things that make someone a good manager prevent them from wanting to be on the podium, prevent them from wanting to take risks, right? And those are things that, you can't lead anybody if you're not willing to get on point. And
And is
so
this Lessons
I think
of a
that,
Frogman?
leading
Is
and
that
managing
available
are
publicly?
related,
If I
but
Google
not the
that,
same
can I
thing.
watch it?
I hope not, because it's one of the it's one of the the side hustles that I enjoy doing. I actually, it's obviously I haven't been doing them during COVID-19, but I'm working on a couple of books in the early stages. One of them is going to be that. It's going to be a deeper look into the substance of my keynotes that I do for corporations. The other is going to be an entrepreneur survival guide, because what I discovered, right, is that the gap between what I learned at Stanford Business School and the stuff I actually needed the day I launched this scrappy little strap startup couldn't have been wider, right? And that's at one of the best business schools in the world. But what those business schools really prepare you to do is enter as a mid-level manager into a large organization. Very few of them prepare you to be a boot scrape entrepreneur, right? That needs to walk out and figure out how to find some space, how to get pesky little things like insurance. When you start thinking about somebody that you're going to partner with, what's that all about? How do you go about the nuts and bolts of raising money without screwing yourself, there and ever after? All that stuff you don't really get in business school. You
no,
get
I
that
agree.
by getting
And
out
we're
there
going to be
and
wrapping
doing
up soon. So
it.
I want to
ask
ask you I wanted to wrap up the questions on angel investing. Any companies that you've written checks to that we would know about?
Well, I mean, I can tell you a couple of ones that I'm super excited about right now. There's one of my, ironically, one of my board members started a company called Basil Street Cafe, which is a really cool automated pizza kitchen concept that I think COVID-19 has actually now made more viable even than before. But it's a really sophisticated combination of technology, branding, and distribution to create a nationwide initially and then global automated pizza kitchen. And that produces some of the most kick-ass pizza that I've ever had in my life, which is really astonishing because your expectations out of a machine are very low. And it turns out it's every bit as good or better than Blaze or any restaurant quality pizza. So that's one that
a better run at it than those guys.
I think sometimes, like there are things that were a great idea, but were ahead of their time. And I think some of the plays that have attempted to do this before had an interesting idea, but the technology they didn't get right. And and it's largely a distribution business as well, because you have to make great pizza and be able to keep the machine stocked with it. And so but I'm excited about that one. I've got another buddy that I'm helping that has a company called Everence, which I think is a really cool opposite end of the spectrum in a lot of respects. It's basically a very unique way to collect, capture, and then encapsulate. Can be anything, but the idea is hair, ash, could be any kind of material, from a flower from, the mountaintop where you got married or buried your grandmother or whatever, and then enables that to then be put into either jewelry, right, that you now have. For instance, I'm having some stuff done right now that I'll have my boys, locks of their hair encapsulated and put into
it's like when
bracelet.
It's like when Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie had vials of blood.
And then,
did you ever read about that? They're fucking weirdos, but they, yeah,
that's a little creepier than I'm into it. But the other thing they do that's really interesting, you either choose to put it into jewelry or into tattoos. So for everybody who has tattoos and wants to ascribe a little more meaning to them, right? It's kind of a cool thing to be able to cut a lock of, everything from your dog's hair to your kid's hair or a cheek swab, and you send it off to them, and they've got this patented, unique process of putting it into what a keepsake, basically a permanent keepsake, whether it's jewelry or a tattoo. Everence, EVERENCE. I think their website's everence.life. But yeah, there's a couple, and then I'm involved in a technology company and LiDAR radar called Luminar, which is a cool company. And that's one of the example of one of those that, all right, not exactly in my wheelhouse, right? Not an area that I can necessarily add value to, but, very exciting. And another friend who pays a lot closer attention to that space put it in front of me, and it just made sense. It's one of the companies that's out there vying for supremacy in the
I feel like if you tell
automobile
me that category and that you're starting a company in there, and, I would just invest in there just because it's like, probably, maybe.
Right. It's kind of in that category. And then you look at the the leaders and go, well, those people are really smart people. This is a sector that someone's going to win in, probably more than one. So, reasonable. And again, as I said, I'm a 20 to 50K investor in any given one thing. I'm not taking huge exposed positions. Usually I like to invest in things where, I can help based on my experience as a brander, as an entrepreneur, some government stuff that I've gotten involved with, because obviously I spent a long time in the government space. But and then just some cool companies, right? There's cool companies that I'm trying to help right now, like Indie.com is an awesome new platform to help influencers monetize their followings, right, with content. And I'm a big believer in that space, and it's an area where I can help them by exposing them to our large installed base of trainers, who all of whom are influencers in their own right, and trying to figure out how to scale themselves, right, and create new sort of passive streams of income. So, it's a smattering, right, and there's
able
a handful of others that are
get
kind of in the same
from the first
same categories.
PE event in order to make these investments?
The first one, no, I should have, right, and that's one of the big lessons for anybody who's listening. And I really believe this. Unfortunately, I didn't hear it, or if I heard it, I didn't listen the first time I heard it. But I really think for entrepreneurs, you really should not I'm speaking generally because there are exceptions to every generality. But in general, I don't think entrepreneurs should take institutional capital without pulling a significant piece off the table. It just, from the time that you do and you introduce a preferred class of shares,
what would be your definition of significant? $1 million,
change,
5 million,
right?
500,000?
Well, I think it depends on the venture. I would view it from where I sit now as, if you were building and then running a successful company and you thought that the only option for financing was to go raise it from institutions, I'd sell at least a third, of my holding to bring those people in, enough to be okay if things go differently than you expected. That would be
so you had to wait for the
rule of thumb
to make
answer. And I probably could have sold more at the first stop, but I was very bullish and very as entrepreneurs need to be. And I thought, hey, this is, I'm not selling anything right now. And that was a big mistake that when I look back on it later on, you don't realize, hey, you could be locked up with these guys for a long time, right? And once they're in front of you, then getting any kind of liquidity becomes really problematic. So, that's just something that entrepreneurs need to keep in mind. And, you could lose control, obviously, if you sell control, but there are other ways where, through the preferences that institutional investors tend to get into term sheets, where your autonomy and your ability to drive the bus.
And you didn't have the ability, and we'll wrap this up in a second. You didn't have the ability to take a couple $1 million, take $1 million off the profit each year to pay yourself. I mean, so like you were just strictly earning a low salary as the company grew, or were you able to because if you raised $5 million right out the gate, I would imagine you wouldn't even have had the ability to say well, this year we made $3 million in profit, I'm going to write myself a $700,000 check.
No, of course not. And you don't, and that's not, frankly, that's a tough way for an early stage entrepreneur to even think, because if you're starting to think about trying to extract stuff out of an early stage business, chances are you're going to impair that business's growth. And so my view was never of that. I mean, I wanted to start making money, right? Because if you count 2 years of business school where I was working on this idea, I went those 2 years plus the next 3 without any pay, right? So I was 5 years.
And that's why I'm saying but you were 10 years in before you raised the first round, environment,
right? Basically.
So it's by that point,
we were
look, if we're doing okay, I can
maybe 9 years in.
I can definitely treat myself a little.
And I should have taken money off the table then. That was one of the mistakes, right? Because what I focused on instead was, hey, I want, to up my salary, right, and my bonus structure to a point at which I can start making, a good living on an annual basis. But I should have done both, right? Because that was possible. And I chose to just focus on, all right, let's get my cash comp up to a level that feels right for, what I've built in the 100 hours a week that I'm working, and not worry so much.
You're saying
about,
you should have it just
extracting value
bonuses,
right? And that I should have done both, is what I said. I did increase my salary and bonus structure.
What were you paying yourself?
I did not pull money out.
We paid $50,000 a year,
and that was a mistake. Well, no, probably more than that by then. But early on, yeah, shit. For the first 3 years, I was paying myself nothing. Then I think I started paying myself $50,000. And it just sort of, if you dollar cost averaged back, it would have been a very bad financial decision, right, on an hourly basis. But you get there and I make a good living today. That's plenty. So it all evens out. But if you dollar cost average the first 10 years, I probably made $50,000 a year. Which after 14 years as a Navy SEAL with a Stanford MBA, right, ain't killing it. And living in San Francisco at the time, I fled to Mill Valley like everyone does eventually, or to Marin, But yeah, I was
I'm in Glen Park
City, paying a mortgage up on Twin Peaks, and
awesome.
Oh well, that's where I was. So I was right behind Tower Market. Glen Park was my regular, the Chenery restaurant. I was still down there. That was my regular jam down the hill, and I used to run Glen Canyon every day.
Yep, I live in downtown Glen Park. I ran Glen Canyon today, and I have a house here with like a garage and a gym with my TRX. This is awesome, man. You're cool as shit. I appreciate you taking the time.
Right on.
What's your preferred method of chatting with people? Twitter?
Well, my social handles at Randy Hetrick, right? Instagram and Facebook. At TRX Training is the brand, and TRXtraining.com is obviously our website. I'm working on a randyhetrick.com website right now, where some of my stuff that my next big vision is to take a page out of Richard Branson's handbook and basically figure out ways to grow my brand that can help the brand that I gave birth to do things that maybe it can't do, and vice versa, right? You ladder yourselves up just like he's done with Virgin and the Richard Branson brand. That's sort of a goal that I have. Maybe I'd be wildly fortunate to get to his scale, but I could be happy with a lot less than that scale as long as I'm still contributing value to the mothership, and it's giving me opportunities.
You have the story, you have the look, you have the charisma. Navy SEAL who's fit and also went to Stanford. You have it, man. You got the it factor. So
that's okay. There are days when it feels like that, and then there are the other days.
This is sick. Thank you.